About the existence of God.
You're agnostic about it?
Yes.
Okay. How would you arrive at a conviction and surety? What are the tools that you
I don't think that I
have
have
used?
I told the other man I was raised in a Christian house, by Christian parents, and I experienced a lot of positive energy and all my friends were Christians, and we learned a lot of positive things.
Yeah, so you're a cultural Christian.
Yeah, cultural Christian.
But not an ideological Christian in the sense that believe ideologically in the existence of God.
Yeah.
Right. Can I ask you a simple question?
The more secure and the more firm you are in your belief, the danger rises that you get intolerant against other religions.
Possibly, but not necessarily. I'll tell you why. I need to be sure that I work for a particular company. I can't just simply be agnostic, or do I work, or do I need to be convinced? Because at the end of the day, the wages are going to come from my company, not from anyone else. So I need to be positive and sure and certain about it. I'm not going to turn up to go to work not sure that they're going to pay me at the end of the day, am I? So even in mundane affairs of life, we take positive stance to be sure about what we do. You can't just simply say, oh, is she my wife or not? Or I'm not sure about it. You need to be sure who you are having, intimate relationship with. You can't just simply say, I don't know, it doesn't care, it doesn't mind, right? When it comes to the existence of God, this issue can be settled quite easily by critical thinking. A lot of people don't use critical thinking, and that's why they leave it to speculations and out in the open agnosticism. Okay? If I were to ask you, can nothingness, which is the absence of everything, create something?
I just read a book, a science book, I must admit, about the idea of what was before the universe, and there's no way till today, no way knowing it.
That's
There's
fine,
no way
but I'm asking you about concept. If there was nothingness to begin with, can something come out of it? Can anything like something come out of nothingness?
I don't know, and I don't think anyone knows.
We do know, you do know. If I have a wallet and I have no money and I have no friends, I have no banks, can I give you some money?
These are things people make, people can see, people can explain.
We are rational human beings, we have critical thinking. Yeah. So let me explore this. I have a wallet, I do have a wallet. If I told you I have no money, nothing, no pennies, no dollars, no cents, no euros, nothing, no money, I don't have a bank or friends or anyone to borrow money from. Can I give you $20?
No, you can't.
Because I have no money. Because if I have nothing, I cannot give you something. If there was nothingness, which has no energy, no gravity, no quantum fields, no quantum fluctuations, nothing, no something, no energy, it cannot bring something into existence.
Yeah,
the fact
one idea science gives is that there was never a point in time where nothing was.
That's what you and I would agree. There cannot be a time when there was nothing. There has to be always something.
That's right.
Now, if there's always something, we are talking about a necessary existence, something that always existed without any beginning.
Yeah.
What are the properties, qualities, or attributes of that thing that always existed? What is it?
I don't know.
Self-sufficiency.
And I like the idea.
Self-sufficiency. This thing that always existed must be self-sufficient because there's nothing prior. Independent, self-sufficient, not needing anyone or anything else for its own existence. Has to be always there, independently in existence. If such a thing exists independently and has transformed and changed all of this world, then it must possess some energy, power, and it must possess self-awareness. It must possess. If it doesn't possess self-awareness, how does it transform things?
Like anything in the universe that has no conscience, anything.
To give you,
we're the only ones.
Shall I give you an example? Once you go home, you're going to need to eat something, right? If you're a tourist, you go to a restaurant. If you're at home in a hotel, you want to eat food from a kitchen. All the ingredients are there. There's this fridge, right? There's milk, there's tea, there's pasta, all of it is there. You just sit there on the table. Do you think these things will assemble by itself and make good food for you, good dish, whatever you like, whether you like pasta or pizza or a rice dish? If all the things are there and there is no conscious, willing agent to assemble all of this together, do you think these things the food will be made on your table?
Maybe not. But,
when you say maybe not, are you saying it possibly maybe?
I don't get your point.
What I'm saying is, if you have all the ingredients to make a good recipe of food, what do you like? Food-wise, doesn't matter.
I don't think that's the point.
No, what I'm saying is, my point is, if you have all the ingredients together and you did not assemble it with the right ingredients together, put it in a cooker or in the fridge, it will never be made. It will remain in its place. It will never be made. This universe, if we say there is a necessary existence that always existed, if it wasn't self-aware with a will to transform us into what we are, nothing will happen. It has to be, this process happened because of a willing transformation.
That's a nice idea. I like it.
It's not an idea, it's something that makes sense rationally.
One problem I have with this is that there's an existence that decides to make a universe which needs 13.8 billion years to create an Earth, which needs 4 billion years to create a human, which needs 1 million years to be able to think about God.
Right. You think this is a problem? I'll tell you this is not a problem, because certain thing needs to be manufactured and made in a certain way. To give you an example, imagine I want to cook a nice dish, a biryani. Have you heard of biryanis? You should taste some in biryanis. They need to be slowly cooked to get all the flavor out of it. If you want to just quickly heat it up, you can cook the food. The meat will be cooked, the rice will be cooked and everything, but you would not get the flavor. The earth needs to be conditioned at a certain amount of time to get in this right proportion and so on and so forth. You could have just simply made this earth like that. So just because the creator made this universe in a period of time, for the creator, this 13.67 billion years is nothing compared to eternity. Yeah? So it's nothing. He could have created it just one go, or he could have created it in this way so that it's something conducive for our own existence on our life. So that the sun that is there and the weight will then give us all this energy from the sun to make our conditions worth livable and so on and so forth. So it's not a defect in the work of a creation. Like when an artist paints, he could have just started with throw all the paint together and that's it. Or he could have just gradually make the shapes and so on and so forth and put some more of artistic effect and so on and so forth. It's not a defect of a creator or an artist when they do that. So what we say critical thinking can lead us to conclusion that there is a being, a necessary existence with consciousness, with will, with knowledge, with power. It is you cannot just disagree with it because it's something intellectually and rationally agreeable.
Yeah. You have to admit that since there is religion, religious people and religious minds tried to make this evidence and didn't find a way that the common knowledge is okay. We all agree that's right, a priori right. That's not the case. There's still doubt, and it's called belief and not knowledge.
That's probably a difference between many of the belief systems out there compared to Islam. My belief system, Islam as a Muslim, when our faith is grounded on solid foundation. Our concept of God is something that is grounded in such that you cannot just brush it aside because it's not a belief based on blind faith. Many people believe in blind faith like this tree is God, this camera is God, whatever. But what we say, the process of how we believe in Islam is a process of elimination and affirmation. So there is nothing worthy of worship. this is not God, this is not God, that is not God. You just say no, not worthy of worship, cannot be God. But eventually, you would have to say there has to be something that is always in existence. So that affirmation comes in, and this conviction that will give you is not a blind faith. It's a faith based on sound reasoning, on intellectual abilities to convince oneself with proof and evidence. But that's the start.
What our priest said when people from my class came to him and said, I want to be to get my confirmation. In fact, you know confirmation? And like getting firm, like
Mansur, I can barely hear you.
When your priest says now you will grow.
This one? This one?
We can barely hear them.
Oh, sorry.
Keep it in the middle.
It's just people need to hear. Okay, there you go. So you were saying?
You're baptized as a baby.
Oh, baptism, yes.
When you
Grow up, there's a second.
the third you go to confirmation. So that means
You become in your community. You become an adult and get the. You can decide, and you're grown up.
Sure. Yeah. So there's a process.
And the friend said, I want to be to get my confirmation in the forest, because in the forest I can feel God. Okay. And our priest said, then go to the foster, go to people who work there and get your confirmation from them, because we are in the church and we have this. What you said, we have a.
But for us to accept God, you don't need to go through any of this process. You simply believe in your heart, acknowledge it, make a statement with your tongue that yes, there is no God worthy of worship except the one and only God, and Muhammed is the messenger of God, okay, and servant of God. That confirmation and declaration brings you into the fold of belief in Islam. And then of course you practice, manifest with your limbs, your actions, what you now believe. You follow the commands and rules and regulations and prohibitions of our Creator. So when I say by critical thinking, it is not just simply blind faith. That process of intellectual speculation is just a start to confirm in a process. But when you investigate the revelation, the guidance, the book, the scripture, the Quran, you know about the Bible, like the Christians of the Bible, we have the Quran, which we say our Creator has sent down as a guidance to people, how they live their life. And it came with its own evidence. Because anyone can bring a book and say it's from God, right? Anyone can bring and say, oh, this book is from God, this book is from God. How can you confirm that this is the case or not? The Quran gives two ways of proving it. One is positive evidence why it's from God, and the other one is giving you opportunity to falsify it. We call them falsification tests. If the Quran wasn't from God, the Quran said, you'd find therein many errors and contradictions and discrepancies, because that's what we expect. If a book is not from God, it would be full of all these historical errors, scientific errors, if it prophesies something to happen in the future, it will get it wrong. So the Quran offers the opportunity to disprove it like that. And at the same time, it offers you positive evidence why this book cannot be from any other than God. Yeah? So as Muslims, our belief is grounded so that we can be convinced and we have tranquility in our heart. Yeah? Otherwise, anyone can believe in anything. So we need to be sure of what we believe. We need to be convinced of what we believe. Otherwise, you know, the whole life will be a life of ups and downs in your... Suddenly you watch a good movie and you change your belief. And you watch another movie and changes your belief. No, it's not like this. Because if the reality is there is a reason why you're created, you need to know why. So if I were to ask you this necessary existence, why did that necessary existence make you and make me? Must be a reason. Must be a reason. Can we just think of the reason ourselves? Maybe we can, but what if you think there's a reason and I think there's another reason and our reasons are different? So we can't just simply get our minds to work out what the real reason is why we exist. But if it comes from our Creator, who tells us, the reason I created you is to be grateful to me, then we can be sure about it. And that's why the Quran tells us exactly why we are created, to worship God. It's not that God needs our worship, we need to worship God, because God has given us the faculty of intellect, the choice, in which we can demonstrate whether we deserve to go to a place of eternal happiness and joy, tranquility and bliss, heaven, paradise, or we deserve to go to a place of suffering and punishment, hell. We make this choice by believing in what our consequence is going to be. God has given us the choice, and He doesn't force us to believe in Him or anyone else, but He tells us what the consequence is going to be. And He offers us the evidence that He is the one who is God, created us. He's the one who's given us the guidance, and He's the one who created heaven and hell, and He's just. He's not going to be unjust to anyone, and He leaves it to you. What do you want? Do you want a life of happiness in this life and the next, or do you want a life of misery? You make this choice. So as intelligent people, we should not forfeit and abandon our eternal happiness for the momentary life here and just ignore God and say, I'm not going to believe in anything. We need to be really scrutinize and reflect and accept this belief by confirming it.
Can I try something with my poor English?
You're doing fine.
I like the way you feel and express your belief. What I also feel is an assurance about the rightness of your thinking and your believing, that that's no room left for other beliefs. And that's maybe dangerous.
Okay.
Because that might be a problem if you try to.
So you're talking about tolerance.
Yeah,
you're talking
about tolerance.
Islam offers that level of tolerance. It tells you, look, this is
tolerance would mean.
I'll explain to you.
There is a possibility, because it's not knowledge, it's belief. There is the possibility that I'm wrong and the Jews are right, or the Christians are right.
This is where Islam gives you the holistic picture of things, not just pixels, the whole picture. It tells you human beings were created by God, and they were not left alone. They were sent guidance. So guidance came with prophet and messengers. Those who believed in that guidance, they're the ones who are okay and saved. It's the same religion, same message throughout times. God didn't change the message. So say for example, the Jewish people, God sent to them, the children of Israel, prophets and messengers to tell them about God. When they believed in the prophets and messengers like Moses and Jacob and Solomon, David and Abraham, they were the ones who were
help me a little bit out there. The Old Testament and the Quran and the
New Testament.
What is the Jewish
Torah.
Have the same roots until Abraham.
So
a little bit past
what happens is this.
They split up, right?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
We say the same God sent prophets and messengers to all nations, not only to the Jewish people, but even to the people in the east and the west and the north and the south. All nations and all communities had prophets and messengers. That is the reason why we still see, even if you go to an Amazonian jungle in Amazon, and you'll find certain tribal people, they still have a belief in God. You go to somewhere in Africa, you'll find the people, indigenous people, they believe in God. You go to somewhere in Australia, you find the same thing. Why? Because God sent prophets and messengers guidance to all nations, because He's just.
But they don't necessarily believe in one God.
At the moment, yeah. At the moment.
Sometimes they have one God.
Correct.
Nature and one water and rain and everything.
Correct. This is currently. In the past.
You just think about it. For example, you believe, you're a strong believer, and I don't believe. But that's okay.
Yeah. But that should tell you the whole picture. It's not just simply.
Beautiful.
You might think it's beautiful, but think about it. When God sent the same message, there were people who didn't like this message. Imagine, I'll give you an example. You're from Germany. If the German wants to stop alcohol consumption and stop all the pubs and stop all cigarette smoking by law tomorrow, would they be able to successfully do that? They won't be. There will be riots. There will be riots. There will be riots. There will be uproars and everything. Why? Because this goes against the people's desires and interests. They're what makes them happy and so on and so forth. So in the past, likewise, when God sent with prophets and messengers with guidance, it had messages like, do not cheat, do not lie. But some people, they thrived with lying and cheating because that made them wealthy and powerful. Just like many people now with lying and cheating and oppressing others, exploiting others, it makes them richer and richer. You know, like how the world we see. In the past, it was like this with certain groups, and they then started changing the message of God. And that message got corrupted, and then instead of this monotheism, believe in one God, it got changed into, you can believe in God and you can believe in this God and that God, because they incorporated and they sort of said it's okay. That's what they did. They made these changes. God sends prophets and messengers again and again to remind people to the same message of monotheism, of one God. And this is what happened with the last of the older prophets, Prophet Muhammed who came to Arabia. But he came initially to them, but for the whole of the world, to bring all of the people back to the worship of one God. Not many gods, one God. Not 3-in-1 gods like Christians believe. Not 2-in-1 gods like the Zoroastrians believe. Not millions of gods like the Hindus believe. But there is only one God, one necessary being. So it rekindled people's intellect to bring them back to the realization what the truth is. So this idea that people have differences of belief is beautiful. It's going away from the truth, not necessarily going back to the truth.
Think about it this way, like, a teacher, they have a multiple choice question, and if a lot of students answer different choices, the teacher doesn't sit there and think, well, it's really beautiful that there's a variety of answers to this multiple choice questions given by my students. The teacher doesn't though. You know why? Because the teacher knows there's only one true answer, and this teacher will only credit the students who choose that one true answer. It's really not that beautiful to think that, oh well, there's so many people who have all these different misguided ideas and don't have a truthful idea.
So you are telling I have misguided ideas and think, but...
No, I forget what I think. No, I don't want you to think what I think. Go ahead.
It doesn't matter how long you talk to me, you never convince me of God. But I never will convince you or try convincing you that there is no God.
Look, I'll be honest with you.
We don't need no. And the example you gave doesn't fit really well, because what teachers ask is about science,
and I don't miss it.
There is
Not necessarily.
That's what I
if you
try to
have a
say.
teacher in
I don't
philosophy
have
and
to
ethics,
convince you
he
that
will
you're wrong.
appreciate different.
Yeah, but what we
Yes, he
I'm a philosophy student.
no.
So
What we are sharing here is the way to be convinced. And each one of us needs to make our own decision.
historical
Yeah, we can be.
historical or not, the point is when you
That's fine. We are only showing the way to approach this question about the ultimate truth. And there are ways where you can be left misguided. I can be left misguided if I don't use the right tools. To give you an example, suppose I want to see myself, how I look like. Now, I can try looking at the floor and see my reflection, or I can look into a mirror and look at my reflection. If I don't use the right tools, which is the mirror, which has a reflective
Let's discuss it right now. Let's just, I don't want
surface,
to interrupt their
I won't be able to see
conversation. I'm
myself.
down to have this conversation. Yeah.
This rocky surface is not reflective. No matter how much I try, I can't see my face there. So I need to use the right tools to arrive at what I'm seeking. That's the point I'm making. When we want to believe in the ultimate reality of who God is, why God created us, not only that we have to have the interest in seeking that answer, but we need to approach with the right tools so that it can help us bring to us with the right answer. Because if we don't use the right tools, I will be always trying and then I'll never know what it looks like. Yeah. So what we are saying is it's important to use critical thinking. That's one thing. Outside our religious biases, because people are biased. I'm biased. You're biased. We are all biased. Biased means
Prejudiced in some way due to our past experience.
yeah. But I have to leave this aside and say, no, let's use critical thinking. Let's think critically and see what makes sense intellectually and rationally. For example,
and the one point is, what I just tried to tell him is that I think science found a way to find answers to questions where you can say
some questions.
This is wrong.
Some questions.
This is wrong. Yeah, that's right. Some questions.
Yes, agreed.
And religious and ethical questions are not one of those questions.
It's beyond the scope of science.
Religion, and there you need belief.
No, but sir, you know, there's something stronger than scientific evidence that you could utilize in the religious and ethical talks. Deductive reasoning is a much stronger form of evidence than inductive reasoning, which is what science uses. So just because science has nothing to say on whether ethics are this or that, or whether religions are this or that, I really don't. You know why? Because science, that is beyond the scope of science. Science only deals with the material world. So the religious and ethical is not the material world. So therefore, if you are trying to use science to learn about these things, then obviously you're going to be empty-handed because you're using the wrong tools for the job. It's like me giving you a tape measure and telling you how much do I weigh.
Yeah, but
It's the wrong tool.
But what I hear when he talks of religion, you try to tell me there is an evidence. My God,
No, but evidence,
the Islamic evidence, and what the Muslims say.
So I hear you, and you're not hearing that for no reason. We're saying that because we be. No, it's not dangerous. In the same way that it's not dangerous for a scientist to tell you, I believe I have evidence for this theory. Beliefs and what's it called? So religious beliefs and ethical beliefs are the exact same way. You could have evidence just because it's not scientific evidence doesn't make it any less evidence. You know, in science, do you not know? 1 second. Do you know in science that science itself uses non-empirical evidence? It's called non-empirical virtues. When there are competing hypotheses that equally explain the data due to the power of due to the power of underdetermination, you therefore have to use non-empirical virtues like simplicity, like comprehensiveness, as ways to judge between scientific theories, and this is non-empirical evidence for these theories. So even in science, not all evidence is empirical. Fantastic. So then we don't need to restrict ourselves to empirical evidence. We can assess other sources of evidence.
What I'm trying to do. The danger I see is science questions search for answers which are not trying to tell us how to behave, how to feel.
Agreed. They're very low stakes, in my opinion.
No, that's not what's their purpose.
No, I understand. I believe I'm with you. We're on the same page.
That's not what they're trying to do.
But we care about how we should live our life because this is important to us.
Yeah, but what I want to say is, if you try to approach to what you should do and what you should feel or think or believe,
Are you trying to say in terms of there are things that people do like moral actions Science does not determine morality. So take the example of abortion.
No, what I'm trying.
Is abortion something that is good?
What I'm trying to say is, if you try to approach to those questions and find an answer that works for you, it is very important not to think or say that I found the truth, it's the only truth, and everyone else has to think the same way.
But sir, you know what would be the problem with that? Sorry. You know the problem with that would be is that once everybody comes to their own truths, everybody wants to exercise that truth, and sometimes someone else's truth